Hello everyone, welcome back to your physics class. I hope you all are good. In the previous video, we have started revising the topic measurement of temperature. So we have revised the simple thermometer and laboratory thermometer. So today we will revise the next type of thermometer, that is clinical thermometer. Clinical thermometer is also known as doctor's thermometer because it is used by the doctors, and so it is also used to measure the temperature of human body because it is used to measure the temperature of human body. So that's why it is used by the doctors, and it is also known as doctor's thermometer or medical thermometer. So now we will see the construction of this clinical thermometer. Construction again is the same as that of the laboratory thermometer or that of the simple thermometer, but there is one exception, that there is a kink in the capillary tube in the clinical thermometer just above the bulb. You can see here, this is the construction of the clinical thermometer, that is same as that of the simple thermometer. Here you can see this is the outer tube which is known as the stem, and in between inside the outer tube there is a inner tube known as the capillary tube, which contains either mercury or alcohol, and one side of this capillary tube is sealed and the other side is connected to the bulb. So this mercury level is also known as mercury thread. The level of mercury in the capillary tube is also known as mercury thread. And here you can see these are the markings done in both degree Celsius and degree Fahrenheit scale. Degree Fahrenheit scale is more sensitive, so we often use to measure the temperature in the degree Fahrenheit scale. And here is the reading of the normal body temperature of human being, that is 98.6 degree Fahrenheit, that is shown on the thermometer. And there is one exception in this case, that there is a bend or kink in the capillary tube in this type of clinical thermometer or clinical thermometer. So why there is a kink? This kink or this bend helps to prevent the falling of mercury level down quickly into the bulb. That means when we measure temperature with this type of thermometer, then we know that the temperature can fall if the surroundings temperature is lower than the body temperature, and the mercury level can fall down below the normal level. So there can be some problems in measuring the temperature of the body. So in this way we need to prevent the falling of mercury below the falling of mercury level down quickly into the bulb, or we can say below that the normal level. Or one more reason is also there for making a bend or kink, that if by accident sometimes the bulb get broken in the person's mouth, then this mercury can get into the mouth of that person. So to prevent from falling the mercury easily or quickly into the mouth of that person, there is a bend or kink made in the clinical thermometer. So these are the reasons that we can understand, that are the reasons for making bend or kink in the thermometer. Next is the range of clinical thermometer. As there are some ranges of various types of thermometers, so clinical thermometer also has some range, that is 35 degrees Celsius to 43 degrees Celsius in Celsius scale, and in Fahrenheit scale it is 94 degree Fahrenheit to 109.4 degree Fahrenheit. If we convert this Fahrenheit into Celsius, then these readings will correspond to the same temperature. Again, these readings will also correspond to the same temperature. And we know the Fahrenheit scale is more sensitive because there are smaller number of divisions, like 180 divisions in the Fahrenheit scale, and there are less number of divisions in the Celsius scale. So Fahrenheit scale is more sensitive than Celsius scale, and the body temperature is usually measured in degree Fahrenheit or Fahrenheit scale only. Next is how to read a clinical thermometer correctly. That means how we can take a reading using a clinical thermometer. So for this, what we have to do, we will firstly take the thermometer or clinical thermometer and we will give some jerks to it. That means we will give some jerks, like we have to give because we want to make the level of mercury below the we may want to make the level of mercury in the capillary tube below this normal body temperature. Then we will keep the thermometer in the mouth of the person whose temperature is to be measured, and we will wait for 1 minute, and after 1 minute we will take out the thermometer out of the person's mouth, and then we will note down the level of the mercury thread. So where the mercury thread ends, we will note down the reading corresponding to the level of the mercury thread, and in this way we can measure or we can take the temperature of the human body. So this is the way to read the temperature of human body or any person by using a clinical thermometer. Next is what precautions we have to take care while using clinical thermometer, or we can say that what precautions to be taken while reading temperature of a person from laboratory thermometer. So firstly, always hold the thermometer from the stem and not from the bulb. Means the thermometer should be kept from the stem. This is known as the stem, and it should not be kept from the bulb, because the bulb will give the temperature of that person who is holding it from the bulb and not of that person whose temperature is to be measured. It will change the reading of the temperature. Next is make sure the thermometer is washed before and after every use. Thermometer should be washed before and after using. Next is that while reading thermometer, eyes should be directly overhead the level, otherwise it will lead to parallax error. Means when we are measuring the reading using the thermometer, then we should directly see overhead the level so as to measure the correct reading, because if we measure the reading or if we take the reading from any other angle or due to the wrong position of the eye, then it will lead to a wrong reading of the temperature. So that reading or that error in the measurement is known as parallax error, which is the shift in the object's position or when it is viewed from different angles. That means when we view the markings or the readings from the different angles, then there will be an error known as parallax error, or it is also due to the wrong positioning of the eye. So we have to hold the thermometer at the eye level to check the correct reading of the temperature. Next is that before measuring the temperature of the person, shake the thermometer so that the mercury level is below the normal mark. As I have already explained you in the reading of the temperature using a clinical thermometer, that we have to give the some jerks or we have to shake it down so as to make sure that the mercury level is below the normal mark. Next is keep the thermometer under the tongue or in the armpit for at least 1 minute. The timing is at 1 minute at least. Next is digital thermometer is better for kids to avoid any hazard due to breaking of thermometer. This is not the precaution, but this can avoid the accidents, like if the glass thermometer breaks in the mouth of the kids, then to avoid any hazard, some doctors use digital thermometers. So next we will read what are digital thermometers. Digital thermometers are the type of thermometers which do not contain any liquid, and the temperature is measured using an electrical component that is known as thermistor. Means thermistor is used in the digital thermometers and it doesn't contain any liquid. What is thermistor? It is an electrical component, also known as the resistor, which is depending on the temperature. That means we can say that this is a type of resistor which depends on the temperature or which can change its value according to the temperature. So thermistor is an electrical component or an electrical resistance based on temperature. Next is highly the accurate and give quick results are given by the digital thermometer. So these are the some advantages of using digital thermometer. Then it can give highly accurate and quick results. It can be carried easily and temperature can be read more conveniently than a glass thermometer. So these are the advantages of digital thermometer. Next is, there are two terms known as hyperthermia and hypothermia. So what is hyperthermia? Hyperthermia is the condition when the body temperature is higher than the normal temperature. As we know, the normal body temperature is 98.6 degree Fahrenheit. The average normal body temperature of human being is 98.6 degree Fahrenheit. So when the temperature is higher than this normal body temperature, then that condition is known as hyperthermia, and it usually occurs in the evening time. And next term is the hypothermia. This is the condition when the body temperature falls below the normal one. So hypothermia usually occurs in the morning time. These are the two terms known as hypothermia and hypothermia. So next we will study about the measurement of area, or we will revise the measurement of area. What is area? Firstly, we will define that what is area. Area is the amount of space covered by an object, or we can say that the surface occupied by a plane figure is called the area of that figure. That how much space or how much surface is occupied by a plane figure, that is area. Area is a derived physical quantity. Why it is derived? Because if we write area of anything like area of rectangle, area of square, then it will be equal to side square, or it will be equal to length multiplied by breadth. As breadth is also length, so it is equal to length multiplied by length for squares also. So ultimately it is derived from length. So that's why it is a derived physical quantity, because it can be written as length into breadth, or length into length for squares, or for cube like volume is equal to length into breadth into height, or it will be equal to length into length for cubes. So ultimately the terms like area, volume, all these depends on the fundamental quantities, length, mass, time, like density is also there. So these are the derived physical quantities. Next is unit for measuring area. The SI unit of area is meter square, because area is equal to length square, so we can write it as meter square, and its symbol is equal to m square. And there are other units also for measuring area. For example, if we have to measure the areas of larger countries or cities, then we can use kilometer squares. And similarly for measuring the area of farms, hectares is also used. And for measuring the area of houses, hectares, kilometer squares, these are used. And similarly, if we have to measure the area of small objects, then we will use the units millimeter square, centimeter square, and decimeter square. So these are some units which are used for measuring area. Next is the relationship between different units of area. 1 millimeter square can be written as 1 mm multiplied by 1 mm. That means 1 millimeter multiplied by 1 millimeter. So it will be equal to 10 to the power minus 3 meter multiplied by 10 to the power minus 3 meter. So it will be equal to 10 to the power minus 6 meter square. Next is 1 centimeter square is equal to 1 centimeter multiplied by 1 centimeter. So it will be equal to 10 millimeter multiplied by 10 millimeter. It is equal to 10 raised to power 2 millimeter square. Or if we want to convert it into meter square, then it will be equal to 10 raised to power minus 2 meter multiplied by 10 raised to power minus 2 meter. That will be equal to 10 raised to power minus 4 meter square. Similarly, 1 meter, we know 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeter. So it will be 10 raised to power 4 centimeter square. 1 hectare is equal to 100 meter multiplied by 100 meter. So it will be equal to 10 raised to power 4 meter square. And 1 kilometer square can be written as 1 kilometer multiplied by 1 kilometer. And we know 1 kilometer is equal to 1000 meter. So it will multiplied by 1000 meter. It will be equal to 10 raised to power 6 meter square. So these are some relationship between different units of area. Next, we will see that how we can measure area of regular and irregular shaped objects or surfaces. As we know, if we have to measure the area of regular surfaces like square, rectangle, circles, then we can use some specific formulas for these surfaces. Like if you have to measure area of square, then it is equal to side multiplied by side. Area of rectangle is equal to length into breadth. Similarly, of circle it is equal to pi r square, and of sphere it is equal to 4 pi r square, where pi is a constant and r is the radius of the circle, and here is the radius of that sphere. So there are some specific formulas for regular surfaces or regular shaped objects, but if we have to measure the area of irregular shaped object, then there are some methods, and one of them is the graph sheet method. So this is the graph sheet method. What is graph sheet method? It is used for measuring the area of irregular shaped objects. As we know, what graph is used for plotting shapes or for plotting graphs and mathematical diagrams, and a graph paper is a paper which is printed with a network or number of small squares of identical size. Here you can see these are the small squares, and the small squares having the size of 1 millimeter, and there is a one big square that I have shown here, and it is the square of side 1 centimeter. This is the bigger one. So the bigger one is of side 1 centimeter, and the small squares are of side 1 millimeter. So next we will proceed that how we can measure area of irregular shaped object. So what we will do, firstly we will take any object whose area is to be measured. For example, we can take leaf, we can take any other irregular shaped object like a stone. So what we will do, firstly we will take that object and place it over the graph sheet, and we will draw its boundary or outline. We can take the graph sheet in centimeter scale also, or in the millimeter scale. That depends on us that what type of graph sheet we want to take. Here we have taken centimeter graph sheet. That means these squares are of 1 centimeter square area, because each side is of 1 centimeter. That's why the area of each square is 1 centimeter square. Now in the next step we will remove that object, and on removing the object then we will find that its boundary or its outline will enclose a number of square boxes on the graph sheet, out of which some will be complete and some will be incomplete. So next we will count the number of fully filled or complete squares occupied within this boundary or within this outline. So we will count. So let's start. This is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20 21 22 23. So these are complete 23 squares. So let us denote the number of complete squares by A. So A is equal to 23. Next, we will count the number of squares which are exactly or almost half filled as half squares, and we will denote that half squares with B. B is the number of half squares. So we will count that one. As we can see here, the number of half squares are approximately here. This is 1 and this is 2. And this is we can't take it as half because it is more than half. So we will count it in the more than half category. So B is equal to T. And next we will count the number of squares which are more than half filled. So now we can see which are more than half filled. This is more than half filled and some space is left. 1 2. This is also more than half filled. 3. And this is less than half filled. Note one thing, that we have to ignore the squares which are less than half filled. That means who have covered the area less than half filled. This is less than half filled. This is here you can see this is also less than half filled. So we will ignore these type of squares. So let's count the number of squares which are more than half filled. That are 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So these are the total number of squares which are more than half filled. So we have counted here. So it is equal to 7. And now we will find the total number of squares or the total area of the object, because the total area of the object is equal to the total number of squares, and total number of squares can be found out by adding the number of fully filled or complete squares plus half filled squares plus more than half filled squares. As we have noted the fully filled squares by A, so we will multiply A with the area of fully filled squares, that is 1 centimeter square. Then half filled, number of half filled squares is b, and we will multiply these by the area of half filled squares, that will be obviously equal to half centimeter square. Similarly, if we have taken the more than half filled, as we have considered the more than half filled squares as the complete square, so we will take the area of that squares equal to 1 centimeter square, which is the area of the complete square. So it is equal to c multiplied by 1 centimeter square. So it is equal to a centimeter square plus b by 2 centimeter square plus c centimeter square. So it will be equal to a plus b by 2 plus c centimeter square. And if you put the value of these counted squares, as we have counted here, we have taken the example, so it will be equal to 23 plus 2 by 2 plus 7 centimeter square. It will be equal to 23 plus 1 plus 7 centimeter square. So it will be approximately equal to 31 centimeter square. Approximately, why we have taken? Because we have neglected or ignored some number of squares which are less than half filled. So it is approximately it will be approximately equal to 31 centimeter square. So I hope this topic is clear to you. Thank you.